represent the chair of US president. I don't know how many of you are agree with me. I say chair of US president. I don't name the US president. I say chair of US president. But I have a reason to say that. Next slide, please. When we go back to Blue Lewinsky case, when we had one of the suspects, the ex-US president, uh, Bill Clinton? No, Bill Clinton, no? Yes. The samples of the undergarments of the this Lewinsky were sent to UK, Professor Alec Jaffrey's lab. They didn't send it to any lab in USA for their own reasons. And this is the slide of Professor Alec Jaffrey, which I am sharing with his permission. Britain's Britain, who's got the bill, and Bill Clinton on the run. And the DNA profile of this ex-president of US, Bill Clinton, were found on the Blue Lewinsky's undergarments. Next slide, please. Next slide. DNA profiling technique, it promises correct identification of an individual, except in monozygotic twins. But there are certain novel forensic situations which I have already talked about, like chimerisms, which may prevent the association of the perpetrator of an offense with a stain left at the crime scene or lead to the false identification of an individual. Next slide. Now, can you recognize the one in the orange shirt? I know you can. Can anyone? No. This is me and my twin sister. We are monozygotic twins. My father had a monozygotic twin brother. These are my cousins, but they are dizygotic. They're as good as any other sibling, but we, two of us, monozygotic. I try because I'm marketing about the DNA fingerprinting. I'm supposed to market about the DNA fingerprinting, but then I fail to say, yes, it has a limitation when we come to the monozygotic twins. For both of us, our children have the same maternal alleles. It's very difficult to say who is their mother. Am I his mother or his Mossy is his mother? It's very difficult to say by DNA profiling. But yes, but in dizygotic twins, it's as good as the other siblings. Next slide. Now let me share some cases which will make this concept very clear. And I tell you, this DNA fingerprinting is somatically stable. One of the advantages of DNA fingerprinting is that it is somatically stable. What is somatically stable? Somatically stable is whatever biological evidence we take, it gives the DNA profile, same DNA profile of an individual. Now, if you ask me, the many of the cases of India which I have handled are of the skeletal remains. Maybe we have digged out these bones or whatever. It is the bones. मैडम सुबह पूछ रही थी पहले कैसे करते थे. Yes, there was a limitations with the bones. We had the superimposition, we had the anthropology, but there are always plus and minus with those techniques. But since DNA profiling has come into existence, so we are safe. Whatever biological evidences we have of an individual, it will give us the same DNA profile, whether fresh blood, blood stain, bone, hair, whatever it is, it gives the same profile. Now here, at the scene of crime, we had the blood stain. And then there were around 7 suspects. But in this case, you see, it's only the suspect 5 who shares the DNA with this blood stain. So it makes clear that it's only the suspect 5 who's involved in this crime. Next slide. Now this is a case of Punjab, a family. The father, the husband, or one of the child, C1, were in Canada, had already moved to Canada. Now this man, he wanted his wife and the other children who were in Punjab to shift to Canada, to immigrate to Canada. When they went to the immigration office, the immigration office wanted to make sure that they belong to the same family. So Case was referred to us. We did the DNA profiling. The blood sample of father C2, C3, and blood sample of father and C1 was called from the Canada, and mother C2, C3, C4 who were in Punjab came to our lab. We collected the blood sample and we did the DNA profiling. At that time, this is the PCR technique we used. Now, what is this PCR? As I said, it's a polymerase chain reaction. In layman's language, it is the photocopy of a small segment of DNA. See, we have a piece of paper. We do the photocopy as many 5 copy, 10 copies, 20 copies, right? The same way, we have a small amount of DNA, small segment of DNA. We do the PCR. That means we are Xeroxing this DNA 30 million times. 30 million times. At present, DNA is PCR technique is very easy because earlier, when Saki and Muller, who got the Nobel Prize for this PCR technique, it involves 3 different temperatures. One is denaturation at 94 or 95, then is annealing at 55 or 56, then is extension at 72. So they used to set a water bath at 94, 95, then have an ice machine, put it in there. When the temperature comes down, put it in 55. Then again, put it in water bath at 72. Have 3, 4 machines, the water baths like that. So it used to take them pretty long time. But at present, PCR is, it takes just 3.5 hours. You set up a PCR reaction, put it in the machine, go and watch. Even if you go and watch a Durandar, a very long movie, you come back, your PCR reaction is done. Correct? So it's just nuts now. But that time, we used to do the single plex PCR, that is PCR at one loci, like single plex PCR. We used to do it many times. So in this case, we found that the mother, she shares half of all these bands or alleles with C1, C2, C3, C4. Whereas the father F, he shares all his bands with C2, C3, and C4, but not with C1. But not with C1. C1 has 2 bands, one with mother and another unknown person. But we did not mention in our report for 2 reasons. One was the C1 was not in question. Number 2, for the ethical reasons, it would have broken the family. Next slide. They were not. That child was from, the mother was same, but father was somebody else. Father was somebody else. This is what the court has to see tomorrow. Like many people go for disputed paternity. See, many people go for dispute. I get disputed paternity cases every second day. Sometimes the father is proved right, sometimes he's proved wrong. Correct. See, I recently, last week only, I submitted a report. Father said that this is not my child, but the child is his, as per DNA report. See, this is what the court of law has to see into all these things. तो कोर्ट देखेगा ना. मैंने तो बोल दिया कि ये नहीं है बाप या ये बाप है, पर कोर्ट को देखना पड़ेगा ना ये बैठ किस बेस पे मैडम कह रही है कि ये बच्चा नहीं है. करेक्ट. Next. Now, it's not only that. We talked about the DNA, this thing. Now we have, as the time advances, science advances, now we have the DNA, maternal DNA lineage and paternal DNA lineage. See now, we have XY chromosome. Now we do the DNA on separately on this X and separately on Y if when required, not necessary always. But when we do the this profiling, we have one loci for XY to say whether it is a male or a female. But to prove that this person, maternal alleles are from this lineage or paternal alleles are from, we can do DNA fingerprinting on X chromosome and on the Y chromosomes also. Like suppose I had one of the case for the hospital, this transplant, the 2 sisters. One is donor, one is patient. But how do I, and the parents are not alive. But how do I prove that they are the sisters? Because As per Mendelian law, I don't have their paternal alleles to share because the two sisters will share 25% of DNA, 25% of alleles. But then I have mitochondrial DNA to prove, or the XXTR DNA, we call it XXTR, we presently do XXTR DNA to prove, yes, they are, at least I can say they are from the same lineage. Although, as per Form 5 gazetted notification, cousin sisters cannot donate. The chachi cannot donate. The bua cannot donate. There are certain clauses. But in such situation, this is the only thing DNA can do. Yes, they are of the same lineage. इतना मैं कह सकती हूँ as per DNA. और same as Y chromosome. I had a case where the mother was not allowed to donate and the father for on the basis of the medical health. Then the chacha said he will donate. Although the committee was satisfied looking into their documents, yes, he is the chacha, but it is to be proved by the DNA. I proved it using the YSTR. I proved it using the autosomal DNA of the two brothers. Then I checked it with the brother and the nephew, and brother and the son and the father. So making into all these, so this is how this mitochondrial DNA XXTR or YSTR helps over there. In Nithari case, I'll talk about Nithari case. Next slide. That the novel situation I've already talked about the chimerism. It is the two DNA in layman's language. It is the two DNA found in one individual. Next slide. But now it can be at times. Next slide. It can be natural chimerism. It's not necessarily only after the HSCT. It can be natural chimerism also because two eggs fertilize, but birth is given by only one child. So the another child it adopts the. These things have to be in case because it's very important for the forensic DNA scientists to know if there is an extra band because at earlier we used to say it can be mutation, but now after my research, after my three projects, because I have worked on the seminal samples of say because rape cases are very common and rape cases are very important, but this semen sample it does not in chimera. This is not a very good sample. It's only the in my research. It's only the hair follicle which is a good sample where we don't find the chimerism. But in semen and all that, it's not. I say it's not a very good exhibit, but because you can find the chimerism in the semen sample also, the cells transfer over there also. Next slide. Human made chimerism can be fetal maternal transfusion, can be blood transfusion, which is very rare at present. But yes, HSCT is a convincing treatment modality for various malignant and non-malignant disease. And this bone marrow, which is a factory of cells where the cells are generated. So there are chances, which as per my research, the cells are transferred to the patient and it remains there. His DNA, the donor ka DNA remains there because I have followed the patients till 90 days. It's very difficult to follow after that because either the patients don't survive or patients don't come up for the follow up, or even if they come, they don't like to visit my lab because unnecessarily doctor ke paas kaam ho gaya and I could follow up only with them till 90 days. So next slide, please. Next slide. But there are erroneous conclusions can be drawn when the person as a source of biological material is a genetic material. That is a very important thing because in one of the cases I remember at CTFT, a child did not match with the mother at one loci, although we could make out because that was a mutation, but always we cannot say it's a mutation. So we had to work a lot as a scientist. We had to work a lot whether it is a mutation, whether it is a chimerism, what is the reason behind it. So we had to really look into it, which the courts as अभी तो नहीं are not taking any I mean attention to this because अभी शायद आया नहीं है ऐसा case, but as an scientist I think we had to keep it into mind because after this IVF procedures and surrogacy are in every gully you have IVF procedures now going on, or surrogacy is also very common. although I am not very aware about the laws of surrogacy, but yes, when I take the blood sample of the individuals, I do ask the mothers whether this is a normal delivery, is a IVF, or is a surrogacy. I do ask because that helps me in concluding, in interpreting my results. Although touch wood, I have never faced any such problem till date, but I keep myself ready for such situations as a scientist. Next slide. I think I've already talked about this case. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Let's come to the cases. Now, I talked about that Human Organ Transplantation Act. We had to identify an individual using four different markers. At present, we don't use at 9, 16, but at 27. I haven't probably updated this. Yes, we use 27 markers. And the advantage, as I already said, is that we just require 1 nanogram of DNA to establish the identity of an individual. Next slide. Next slide. These STR markers we use, these are called the short tandem repeat markers. The things have